So we are going to custom design your building based on the location. So downtown, 403 Columbia. So there's a certain amount of snow load, rain load, seismic load that we have to take in consideration. So that all goes in.
Welcome to episode 31 of the Crownsman podcast, where we discuss industry, mining, energy, agriculture, construction. I'm your host, Jared Downey, and my co-host is Gowdy Molina. How are you?
I am very good, thank you.
Good. Thank you
Good.
for getting everything set up today. It's quite a nice setup we got here.
Yeah, it was. You know what? I felt it was kind of less hectic than usual.
Yeah.
Mm,
Our guest is
odd.
very relaxed, and that helps.
Yeah, I think that is a big difference.
It does
Most of our guests are kind of like a little nervous,
A little on
and
edge.
it kind of gets us a little nervous.
So I want to start a show with because we're doing a construction or a building show today.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, then I was thinking about buildings, and I thought, what do people most think about when they think of biggest building? Well,
Yeah.
of course, they always think tall. So actually, for my honeymoon, I was in Tokyo, well, Japan, but we finished the trip in Tokyo. And so we went up to the Sky Tree, which is, I want to get this right, is 451 meters tall, 1,480 feet on the top floor. That's not the height of the building. That's just the
The
top floor.
Wow.
You'll have a picture I sent you of it. It's so big that when you're up at the top, the huge buildings in Tokyo look tiny. They look like little houses. The shadow stretches across the city.
Wow.
You can see Mount Fuji from the top. It's just unbelievable.
Huh.
The other building people would think of was, how do you say it? The
Burj Khalifa.
Burj Khalifa.
Yeah.
I really should know how to say that. It's 830 meters.
Wow.
It's massive. Again, Tokyo, the Sky Tree is actually taller because it's a radio tower.
Yeah.
But the one in Dubai is higher in the where you can actually access, I think, is how it works.
Okay.
So anyway, those are the big buildings. But the biggest one with the most space,
Okay. So okay.
just
Like
mass,
volume, right?
which is one of my favorite buildings. And yes, I stopped by it because I was in Seattle this week, so I stopped by it. I tried to take pictures of me there, and it didn't look good, so we're not showing that one.
No selfies.
No selfies. I was pulled over on the side of the highway trying to look, so we had to get back, and it was just ridiculous. But that building is, let me try to find, it is 98.7 acres of space.
Wow. What building is it? You still haven't
Oh,
said
it's
it.
the Boeing Everett factory.
Of
Yeah.
course. Got
It's
it.
massive.
That makes sense.
It's so massive. And they've got the big mural on it with the doors, and you can bring that one up too.
Yeah.
It's just so amazing. So, my point is, in the industrial sector, the huge buildings are not necessarily the tall ones.
No.
They're these big that house all this stuff. So I want to get into that. Before we do, let's bring on the sponsors, and then we'll
Yes.
bring Randy on.
Perfect. Alrighty. Well, we wouldn't have the Crownsman podcast without our sponsors.
Certainly not.
So definitely a shout out to all of our sponsors. First up, we've got Savannah Equipment. If you need everything from slurry pumps to jaw crushers to ball mills to conveyors, you can go to the leader in mining or used and new mining equipment, and that's Savannah Equipment. You can visit them at savannahequipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day.
I got to quickly throw something out there. Savannah is actually doing a couple specials.
They are.
'Cause they do product lines
Stay
and that.
tuned. That's
Yeah.
right. Which we will get into later.
Yeah.
We also have, let's see, sorry. Actually, no, let's get into it right now.
The specials.
Yeah, let's do specials.
That was when we started the show. We had it was sort of to promote other parts of the business, but then we wanted. So when we started doing the show and we realized how engaged people were, especially with the engineers and like product specific information, we thought, a lot of business shows go more on the, the overview, business strategy, leadership, and all that stuff, there's some absolutely fantastic shows about it. But we realized there's not a lot of shows that really dig into the details. So we started doing our show in that sort of style and saw how engaged people were. But we also, companies don't come on here just to plug. So they come to provide information.
Right.
But then we have this platform for them to kind of unashamedly also produce, launch your products. Like you go to a trade show and try to launch your products, you're launching it to a few thousand people that walk by your booth,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
On this show, you can launch it out to thousands, plus you can take it to your own people and your own network and market it. So we released the specials. So in addition to advertising, you can also come and release products on the show, and it's in a different, we can bring that photo up too.
Yeah.
It's in a different set that is
Totally
just a
different,
one-on-one
yeah.
interview, and we just unpackage your product releases.
Yeah,
So it's a
exactly.
really unique platform. Please check that out. We'll put the contact information.
Mhm.
And with that said, now we're done plugging ourselves. Let's bring on Randy Ludwar. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here and to meet you folks. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, you're the well, we connected on LinkedIn, which is you have a one-on-one network, but the LinkedIn, the ability to network with people on LinkedIn is just amazing. Hey?
It is, yes.
And we wanted to do some construction, building stuff, and so when I was looking through and I found you on it, you're actually the business development manager in Canada for Legacy Building Solutions.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
How long have you been with them?
Almost, it'll be 2 years, I think this fall.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
They're pretty. Legacy is. What do they? I'll let you explain what they do in a nutshell first.
Okay. Well, Legacy Building Solutions has a unique building offering where we actually have a custom designed structural frame that acts as a skeleton for a building. And then we have a fabric solution for the exterior and the interior with an insulated cavity. So it was designed initially more for storage, industrial, and it's now very quickly come on to where it can be very easily not converted, but designed for recreational facilities and any large span buildings. Like we quoted on a building not too long ago that was 300 plus feet wide, and you were talking about 450 meters tall. Well, this building was 450 meters long, so it's like 1,400 feet long. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really designed for the big building, cover big events and big piles of stuff and big warehouses. Boeing would be a typical example of what something like we would be able to do.
Yeah, so you are building these large. I mean, I know you build some of the smaller ones too, but
Yeah.
you're building these large scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a building line that can be anything from 30 or 40 feet wide to 300 or 400 feet wide. And that's clear span space. That's unobstructed, no columns.
400 feet wide, clear span.
Yeah.
That's massive.
That is, yeah.
Is that how common are those buildings? Like, are there? I mean, you wouldn't have the exact number, but are there 1,000 of those buildings in North America? Like, is it?
We see them more often now than not, because the companies want unobstructed space,
Yeah.
right? Typically, buildings were back in the earlier days when we didn't have the same technology. Buildings would be on a 25, 30, or 50-foot grid pattern, right? And I remember working quite often, and you were building a building, and every 30 feet by 50 feet you'd have a column there, right? Unless it was a special circumstance, and then you'd take out the column and put in an extra heavy beam. Today it's a little different. We have computerized engineering programs that will actually calculate all of that out so that you can get these massive spans.
Yeah. Well, I've driven the forklifts through the ones with the beams, and they pad them up. They pad them up for me.
Yeah. I've repaired a couple of those damaged.
My car now has sensors all over the place. I can't hit something if I want to.
I think you can. You're
Yeah,
so aware now.
No, I can't.
Yeah.
It puts it.
Oh, 'cause
parks
it'll
it.
stop.
It just stops me.
Oh,
I go.
okay.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It's not even fun anymore.
Well, and I know this is off topic, but I thank the auto industry for that.
Yeah.
I was going down Columbia here a month or two ago, and I ended up in one of these precarious predicaments where you're sort of in the intersection, but you're not.
Yeah.
And I was in the intersection behind a bunch of other cars that were at a red light. And someone coming up behind me wasn't paying quite the same attention. And I heard this screeching of brakes. And whoever was driving that other vehicle had this automatic sensor. And the vehicle actually stopped her so she wouldn't run into the back of me.
Yeah.
So I'm going
Oh.
bonus auto
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it. So,
Well, they're using that in
Absolutely.
heavy industry too, right?
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, it literally, driving it saves lives, but
Yeah.
I mean, the damage that these machines can cause without
Yeah.
the sensor technology.
Yeah.
I mean, a human being, you're going to make mistakes, and there's
Yeah.
no way you can be way up driving these machines and seeing it in these big buildings. I mean, I don't know how many. You've seen more than me. I don't know how many holes in buildings I've seen.
well,
from
and
this.
and that's one of the things that with our building because of the fabric, we don't see as quite the same number of holes as you would in a building where it's a metal system.
Right.
Where our fabric will rebound. It has a memory to it.
Do you have
So-
is there sort of do you actually have a grade of where it will kind of go to? I mean, it would be flexed
We-
quite a bit, right?
Well, yeah, for sure it does. And if anyone goes online, you can see our fabric testing. We've had our fabric tested from everything from tear to weathering to smoke, fire. And one of the videos we have, it shows our owner in a skid steer on a 20 by 20 frame with our fabric stretched across the frame, and he's driving the skid steer around on this fabric. And so and it is so it the skid steer rubber tires marks it a little bit and stuff.
Yeah.
But you take the skid steer off, you go there next morning, and the fabric has a memory. It comes right back.
Is your
Wow.
fabric actually? You brought a couple samples here. Is this fabric? Is it different? Is there 100 different grades of fabric? When you're driving, you see all these buildings, or half of them this kind of fabric, and half of them are cheaper or more expensive
Well,
fabric? or-
you've got different types of fabric. You've got PE, which is polyethylene, and then PVC, which is what I've got here today.
Okay.
And this PVC would be a 28 ounce, and it would actually be twice as strong as a 12 ounce polyethylene. And so that currently is the best fabric in the marketplace in North America today. So.
Yeah. Has that been developed when you first Legacy? You're trying to put a hole in it, got it? I don't.
I'm trying really hard. It's not working. I thought
Well,
maybe
Well,
I could.
It's double. It's reinforced. There's strands in
That's
between,
definitely
and then there's
very-
double layers, and then there's
Yeah.
lacquer finishes on both sides, protected
Very
from UV and weathering. And
Has it developed from 20 years ago? Is this a different product than Legacy was doing? Has it
Oh
evolved?
yes, for it has, yeah, and so that goes back to before my time, but yes, this fabric has changed considerably over the years. The old coverall days, or the old days when they'd put fabric on it was it was more of a PV or a PE or polyethylene, which was counterwound strands with lacquers on it, or material on it. It had about maybe 15-year life, 10-year life. This here fabric today, we warranty it for 25 years, and
Wow.
it'll give you 30 years of life to 35 years of life. I'm fairly confident. You look at some famous or some very iconic buildings in Vancouver
Yeah.
that have fabric on them. Pan Pacific is one, for example.
Yes, that's right.
BC Place, you look at when they pull the cover on, that's a fabric cover, and the skating oval at UBC is got a fabric cover on the laminated timber. So the fabric has been around for many years, and we've been increasing every generation the quality. This is a 28 ounce, and this is the latest generation that we have in the Exotech line. So
Going back to the structure of it, You know, these spans of, you know, 400 feet, which is just.
Yeah,
But there's a. You were talking off air. You're talking about the engineering of it as well, because you've got. You were talking about at one time you've got. They would, you know, go to a steel maker and get this, but
Yeah.
you end up with all this waste because you've got the steel, the same thickness,
Yeah.
the same width, everything all the way from top to bottom, which is actually making the building heavier, but unnecessarily so. So there's a lot that's evolved,
Oh,
right?
for sure. So I'll take your mind back to a very iconic picture, and the iconic picture is where in New York, I think it was New York or Chicago, they were building this skyscraper, right? And you see all these guys sitting out on a steel beam, right?
Yeah.
And and that beam was a traditional type of steel beam. I don't know what the depth was. It might have been a 24 inch and it might have weighed 50 pounds per foot. That steel beam was designed back in who knows 1800s, you
Yeah.
know, that configuration.
Yeah.
And in the engineering days, we had all the data for each and every type of beam that was manufactured out of the rolling mills. So you'd have this massive steel beam, and sometimes the loads on that steel beam are different at one point than another point.
Yeah.
So where you had a significant amount of shear, you needed lots of steel, and in the bending side, or when you're calculating bending moments, you needed more steel. But there's a piece in between that's neutral, right? And you don't need quite as much steel. Well, you're going to pay for that steel whether you needed it or not in the traditional building
Right.
methods. Then came along the pre-engineered building groups, you know, the Butlers and the Varco Prudens, Robinson Building Systems, and they started designing using a more defined design system where they would actually calculate at each of the sections of the beam and the column what the moments were and what the reactions were. So then they started designing beams specifically to meet those. And then along comes computerization in about the 60s or 70s, and these building groups moved into the metal building system software. And so now you can literally design a beam that calculates what everything is almost every half inch or every couple centimeters of the beam, and it can tell you exactly how thick, how wide, how deep,
Wow.
you know, all the characteristics. And so you're getting now building structures that are larger spans, but they're also lighter, and now it's more important to tie the building together with secondary structurals, right? Like wall girts and purlins and proper bracing in the right locations. And the building starts acting as a unified structure.
Right.
The one advantage of the fabric that we do, what we include is in our building design, we don't design the building to take in consideration any of the other materials for bracing. Like some buildings will take in consideration the metal sheeting on the outside, and they'll say, well, we got metal sheeting, so we can take some of that metal sheeting and use it as a diaphragm bracing so we can lighten up the cross bracing or the structure someplace. Well, if the metal sheeting comes off in a wind, all of a sudden you've got a building now that isn't quite as strong as it used to be.
Right.
Well, we consider our building, the structure, as a unified unit. So whether you have fabric on it or not, that building is going to stand there.
Oh, so even without the fabric, it is that.
That's
Oh,
right.
I see.
Yeah, yeah. So we put all of that energy into designing a building that's going to stand, whether it's got fabric on it or not. So
Yeah. So that's that. Those spans now. So is it? Does that when you're producing a new building, then are you having to get that steel custom produced then every time if because of the
Nope.
different?
no.
So how does that?
So we'll our process is where you client, we start the meetings and the design discussions or the building need discussions. So we are going to custom design your building based on the location. So downtown, 403 Columbia. So there's a certain amount of snow load, rain load, seismic load that we have to take in consideration. So that all goes in. And then you're going to tell me what your building is going to be used for. And then we start plugging in all of that criteria and what the special requirements are. You need a mezzanine or you need a conveyor or whatever. So we plug all of those that load information in. And then we start doing the preliminary design work for your building. Once the preliminary design is completed and you've looked at it and said, yeah, that's what I want. So then our computer program, we finalize the design, get all the final details and engineering parts, calculations run. Then our computer program is taken and sent over to our construction, or pardon me, our fabrication line, and we plug that information into the computer in the fabrication plant, and it takes flat steel, whatever width it is and whatever thickness you need, and it actually CNC or custom cuts each section of steel.
Oh, I see.
So we custom cut and fabricate all of the beams in our own facilities.
Oh, so you have multiple grades of steel. It tells you which. So you're basically chopping them into pieces and then reassembling them together, or assembling them together.
And then the next step is it's custom cut, and then there's a CNC welder that puts the proper welds in.
Oh, that's
Because
okay. I get
because
it.
in designing this, there's a couple of things that when you're building a beam that are important. Like thickness is one, width is another, and weld. What kind of weld are you using? Because the weld has a lot to do with how the steel is all held together. So everything we do is custom designed, cut, and welded in our own facilities. And then we're also certified by the Welding Bureau. We're A660, and we design and build to 47.1. And so we've got all the certifications and quality inspections to ensure that the building that we're going to send over here next week is the right building.
Right. I'm curious. So is it cost savings? Obviously, there's a cost savings when you're not using all the thickness of steel. Is there any other advantages to using different thicknesses of steel, or is it purely a cost thing, or does it actually add any structural by lightening the building?
Well, the real advantage is that if you have a unique circumstance where you say, by the way, I need a building that's exactly this wide at the bottom or this high, we take that into account. So there's no limitations on height or width, and when I say no limitations, money is obviously a limitation.
Yeah.
But for example, I worked on a project not too long ago that was 85 feet high, and that was in Sudbury, Ontario. And when I say worked on, was in pre-construction on it.
Yeah.
So realistically, the money that you're going to save is in the fact that we can custom design the building to meet exactly your needs. You're not paying for an extra 5 feet of building because the building line only comes in 95 foot widths.
Right.
If you say I need a 91 foot width, then we design it to that.
Right. So. Yeah. Does it? So if it's 80 feet high and that roof is lighter, that there's no real. If you did it with just the same thickness all the way across, that wouldn't make any difference to design. It is just purely a cost savings.
It is. Yeah. At that point, it is purely a cost savings.
Yeah. I want to get into. Some of these different environments. We're going to do a quick break for our sponsor. A little bit about your professional career. And then in the second half, what I want to do, and I hope the audience stays with us for this, I want to get into some of these projects in these military bases where there's these environments that you have to design. I want to get into that in the second half.
Yeah.
So we'll do a quick sponsorship and then go into that.
Okay. So thank you to our sponsors, all of our sponsors, and we also have Data Cloud. Does it feel like you're drilling and blasting blind? Could your MWD measurements be better? The Data Cloud platform shows your lithology changes in real time for better blasting and fragmentation profiles. Check out their IoT sensors and cloud computing platform at datacloud.com and learn how you can know your rock today. Streamline. They offer a complete package of fleet management solutions with 3 incredible products. Number 1, NaviStream, their onboard intelligence and telematics system. NaviLink, their vehicle automation and IoT platform. And Dagama, their dynamic transportation management system. And you can visit Streamline at stti.com for the Streamline Advantage. Awesome.
Both of them have been guests on our show, both those companies.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting information. I should send you links to them. There's some of the tech that they're doing is
I'd like to see that.
wild.
Interesting.
I do attend the mining shows like PDAC and CMI and stuff, or CIM. Yeah, CIM.
CIM, yeah.
Yeah. And the technology now that I'm seeing is just phenomenal with GPS, and literally, they're showing you a picture now of 3D animations of what they're seeing down below the ground.
That's right.
It's just
Interesting.
incredible.
Oh, they're doing blasting, and they take a picture of it, and it gets sent in, and it gets analyzed, all automated, and it'll tell you how the blast went. So you have a data cloud that basically drills down. Their sensors tells you exactly what's in the rock. So then you put your explosives in so that it blasts it correctly. Then there's another company that was on our show called Whipware. No, was it Whipware with the right? Then they can take a picture of that blast and tell you exactly basically analyze exactly how the blast went. So you just get more and more precise. And in mining, that's just millions of dollars savings with those two technologies.
Yeah.
Oh, it's pretty. It doesn't get talked about enough. We try to cover it.
Yeah. Where would we be without technology now?
A lot more pollution. I'll
everything
tell you that.
I'd be fixing more columns because.
I don't drive one anymore. So
Exactly.
No, I do. I like the machines.
Well, I had a couple questions, more about you and your personal kind of education and where you came from and how you got to.
Sure. I'm a graduate of the Saskatchewan Polytechnique, and I'm proud to carry the Applied Science Technology credential, and use that to pretty much catapult my life into a construction career. Been in construction 30 plus years. I won't give you any closer numbers than that because it starts to divulge my age.
Yeah, nobody wants that. I think we all try to hide it.
And but I started in Saskatchewan, and one of the great companies in Canada gave me an opportunity. Dominion Construction, actually, a BC company here. Had an operation in Saskatchewan, asked me to manage their southwest division of the operation. And basically I grew through Dominion to be Northern Alberta division manager, and then eventually I came into Vancouver to manage special projects here for them. And so they gave me the real start in my construction. And if you ever wanted to be exposed to projects, Dominion was a great place because they had all brands and types of projects, and they were one of the largest builders here. They were $450 million company in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so they were a huge entity or enterprise. And I learned a tremendous amount from the group, and then a company took me back to Alberta, actually, and I was vice president. Actually, I moved from being a manager of manufacturing, or director of manufacturing, to VP of Ops, and then eventually became CEO of a company called Modus Group. Mm-hmm. And Modus Group was another very interesting and great company. They built for part of the early 2000s. They built all the portable classrooms in Alberta.
Wow!
And I was part of that, so it was pretty cool.
Wow,
pretty cool to be part of that.
good.
Yeah. And then I've been vice president of operations and VP of business development, and now I'm manager of business development for Legacy. And it's for me, it's been a wonderful career. So
Wow,
I really enjoyed it.
Incredible. And you have a lot of titles. Can you can you kind of tell us what each one is?
Yes, the ASCT is Applied Science Technologist. That is my designation for my diploma,
Okay.
or my engineering. And the or the GSC is the Gold Seal designation from the Canadian Construction Association. I'm recognized by the Canadian Construction Association as a project manager and as professional estimator. So I've got that qualification, and then the PMP is my professional project management designation, and the Project Management Institute is a worldwide recognized project management group, and so I hold their designation as a PMP. So.
Oh wow, so that's amazing. Um, what how do you find, from where you started in construction to where you are now? Are there any differences? How far or how many changes have there been from back then to now?
So, an engineer told me this. A structural engineer that I worked with, a very wise gentleman. He said, in the early days, mass made might, and today it's we build it so it'll stand up, right? And
Right.
so, and what he was getting at that with that statement is that money is everything today, and so in a project, we work with companies, and it starts with their business performa, right? And so you've got a business performa. There's a certain amount of capital that is available or a capex to spend on a project, and we need to work with that owner to develop the best building solution for that project. And it wasn't that in the old days there wasn't a budget, but if we need a little more cash, well, we'll see what we can push and pull around in our budget to get you that extra little cash. Today it's not like that. Today it's very, very cash sensitive. So if I was going to comment, I'd say today we're more budget and cash conscious than we ever have been, and what that has driven is innovation. Traditional buildings using that big steel beam versus now custom designing that beam so that it does more work with less material, and that's important. The other side that I see is safety. We have our industry has changed simply because we have a lot more respect for people that are working in the industry, and safety is a big issue, and it should be because every day, and I don't have the exact numbers, but we lose about 1 or 2 people every day in construction or in workplace incidents,
Yeah.
and
In
that's
North America or U.S.?
in Canada. And so if it's in Canada,
In Canada
it's,
alone?
yeah,
Oh, wow.
one
Yeah.
person a day, pretty much.
That's
Yeah.
too many.
That
It is.
way too many, and you don't hear about them, right? But it's happening, right?
Yeah.
And so anytime I get a minute to put in a plug, I put in a plug for safety because realistically, and we have everything in place, right? We have all the lifts now. Like in the back in the 80s, well, if you were on a 30-foot ladder, you were on a 30-foot ladder. As long as the ladder was tied off, you were okay. Today, we'd never see a 30-foot ladder. You'd
No.
see a 30-foot lift that would go 30 feet, right?
Right.
And the guy would be tied off in the lift,
Harnessed.
and
Yeah.
harnessed and everything,
right.
right? That's the way it's supposed to be. But that doesn't take away from the fact that you can walk out onto any construction site today, and you can see a guy standing on a 12-foot ladder, reaching to change something.
Yeah.
And it's insane, right?
is.
And I've seen over the last couple of years, even though with all the safety stuff we have in place, and I hate to use the word stuff, but I will. Not that long ago, I was out and I saw a guy in the front end of a backhoe bucket doing something. He was probably 10 feet in the air, not tied off, and if I wasn't driving by on the highway, I'd have definitely walked up and said, by the way, someone's going to get hurt here.
Yeah.
And we and you know, our responsibility is, and people don't like it, but our responsibility is to protect everyone. So if I am walking by something and I see an unsafe practice, I will tap someone on the shoulder and say, by the way,
Yeah.
I haven't lost any teeth yet, but
But I think I see, actually, I come from a family of all construction workers.
Yeah.
My father, my brother now, my husband.
yeah,
So definitely grew up in that area. And you see a lot of construction workers that they do the unsafe thing, sometimes out of mere like how easy it can be. Oh, because instead of having to go and take that extra 20 minutes to
Yeah.
put on a harness, I could just do it like this, right? But it's like, those 20 minutes could save not
Yeah.
just your life, but
yeah,
someone else's as well,
no,
right?
exactly right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So the industry is changing, and it's going to change some more. Like we're due to basically budget and time, because budget and time and safety they have to walk hand in hand. But because of all those constraints, now we're going to see more innovations coming. Modularization is a big thing, right? Like I was just reading an article in Innovate. They're building a 100-room hotel. It's all coming in mods, 5,000 square feet of conference area. Everything is being shipped in. They're going to assemble it on site. So the time frame, the cost savings was $6 million, and the time frame was like a year. So that is where the industry is starting to propel to, and so our reaction to that is. We are basically going to modulize as much as we can so that we as a builder can, number one, be quick on site, at the safest possible ability, and so for us, we're looking at how can we be more efficient on site for the owners, because every day that I can put an owner into a building sooner is a better return on their investment.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
that's my goal.
Do you you don't ever just give the building to someone else to assemble? You're always assembling, right?
We do it all. We negotiate and work with you as the owner. We fabricate your building in our facilities, and then we have installation crews in Minnesota that will go in and install the buildings, or in locally here we've got a construction company in Chilliwack, Goosen Construction. Sorry for the shout out.
Oh no, that's
They do all of our installations in the west side, and then we've got Canada Tank Solutions who works on the eastern side for us.
oh I see.
And so.
On average, how many buildings do you think you get done in a year?
Oh, unprepared. Not even in my notes.
That's what makes the show interesting, though.
I couldn't give it to you in buildings because we have vertical sectors that include everything from aviation through to salt storage facilities and to recreation, agricultural, equestrian, and so a municipal building, salt storage, may only be 40 by 80 or 40 by 60, right?
Right.
3,200 square feet. Takes as much effort to go through that process as it does the 95 meter by 450 meter facility. Mind you, that's a little more process. But
Do we have a picture of that in the thing? I want to.
no, I don't actually. No, I think the one picture that you do have that is one of my crowning, one of the projects that I like to talk about is Fox Creek. That's an 82,000 square foot facility in Fox Creek, Alberta. It was a recreation center, a sportsplex, and it has a hockey arena in it. It's got a swimming pool.
Is that on the brochure one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll bring that
Yeah,
up a sec.
so-
sorry, what all does that one have in it?
So it's got a full-size hockey arena with a walking track and seating and everything for hockey events. It's got a swimming pool with a lazy pool, something
Mm-hmm.
similar to the one at near Edmonds or on Edmonds,
Yeah.
the rec center. We've got a full gymnasium in it or field house. And then it's all connected by a core or hub, which is a two-story area that has reception on the main floor, and then dining room and lounge and administration offices on the second floor. So it's a beautiful structure. It's, like I say, in Fox Creek, Alberta. I started working on it in early 2016 or late 15, and they just finished the project here a little about 6 months ago or a year ago.
Yeah,
So,
during after the we can just edit it in on the top. We've looked through
Yeah,
it. But yeah, no, I looked through it and it's
Nice.
quite
yeah, there's
it's quite something.
yeah. If you
Actually,
go,
I'm
there's
just bringing it up. Oh,
one.
actually, I
Sure.
can't.
Oh, you can't?
No,
Oh.
I have to switch everything.
Oh,
That's okay.
darn.
Well, later in the show,
Technology, yeah.
in the second or when we edit
This-
it, we'll put it
The-
together.
Yeah.
what you're seeing there, though, is really one of the highlights where we can customize, because that
Yeah.
fabric has got all silhouettes on it of swimming and skating and the custom entry, custom doors in it, and
It's got like
yeah, it's a real beautiful building, real beautiful structure.
Yeah,
And,
wow. And how many
Wow.
square feet is that, did you say?
that I believe is 82 or 92,000 square feet of facility. So.
Wow.
Wow. And then,
That's
so
very
when did
interesting.
they come with a design on that, or do they say this is like? Do you help with actually where
Well-
the hockey rink's going to be and the pool? Like
So the process starts where a client will call and say, by the way, I've got an idea, right? And so we'll start to work through that idea with the client, and then we'll start to understand what kind of team we're going to need to bring in on this. And on this project in Fox Creek, Beck Vale Architects out of Calgary were brought in as the architectural firm. And so I worked with Beck Vale on that until we got to the construction side of it, and then we start to then talk about, okay, we've got an architect, we've got a client. Well, now we need a general contractor. So who is the perfect general contractor in this space? Because not all general contractors work in all spaces. You'll have, and a lot of general contractors have overlap, but some are really good at the industrial projects, where it's like potash mines and fertilizer facilities.
Yeah.
Others are good in recreation, others are more residential, and then there's a whole commercial sector that sort of crosses all over the place. So on that particular project, Cornwood and Dixon out of Edmonton was brought in as the general contractor because they've got a good variety of experience. Beckvale also knows our building very well and how the components can come together. Cornwood and Dixon understood the nuances of the building industry and how pre-engineered or a custom designed building like ours,
Yeah.
could facilitate the needs. And so we came together as a team, and eventually got built and finished. And
Yeah, it's sure something.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
so
The other thing is with this is the extreme weather. Now I have a better understanding of the fabric now, but you're talking about. I mean, you're going into extreme cold, because you're doing. I mean, you're doing anything from military to mining to oil and gas. So you're extreme cold, extreme heat,
Yeah.
huge heat from or wear from extreme heat conditions. 20 feet of snow in some places. I mean, so what is happening? Is that all part of the engineering process? Like, what are some examples of where these buildings even go?
So the building structure is the building structure, and when we're looking at whether it's cold or hot, structural steel will react almost the same in both conditions, except there is an expansion contraction factor that may or may not be to be taken into consideration. But with the fabric, whether it's extreme hot or extreme cold, the fabric is only affected by the penetration of the heat or the cold. And fabric is going to be warmer in cold and cooler in heat. And it's simply because when you have metal, it's a direct and it passes directly through. The fabric gives you a bit of a cushion in that. So, but our fabric is designed to be in heat, hot conditions such as way south in Texas, or in extreme cold conditions like Alaska, or northern Ontario, northern Quebec. Newfoundland, we've got Newfoundland's not that cold, but there's a tremendous amount of snow out there. So we're actually working on a post-smolt facility in Newfoundland, which is a part of the salmon hatcheries. And for that project, we've got not only the weather to contend with, but there's also corrosion and corrosive conditions. So we got to keep in mind that we don't want the building to burn down from corrosion,
Right.
and not burn down, but I mean come down. So we've got an epoxy framing system, or epoxy paint being applied to that. Our interior liner, actually, the 19-ounce liner that we have, I think it's the brown one.
Oh,
Yeah, that fabric, once it's welded, creates an environment on the inside of the building that literally moisture and air vapor cannot get through.
when you say welded, you're talking about the overlap and then a weld.
That's right. Yeah. So, and our envelopes on a traditional building where you have this on the outside, the R30 insulation in between that fills the cavity, and then the 19-ounce on the inside, will give you
That's inside. Okay.
a building that is 157 times better than any building when it comes to air and moisture and pass through. So.
So then, what about weight? When you're doing
157%, not times. 100%.
times, yeah.
Times wrong.
I missed
Percent,
that. I
right?
moved on to the next question.
1.5. So
We'll be getting a call. That guy on the show. That's not true.
but nonetheless, our fabrics have been tested for weathering, right? So whether it's heat or cold, they basically perform very, very well in any of those environments. The other beauty that we have that most other builders don't have is we have what's called a keter rail, and how our fabric is attached to the building. And our keter, some builders will take and literally, in order to get because what happens is, and there's a membrane that's put in here, and so the roof fabric then slides up this keter rail, and then there's an overlap that's designed into this, and we have photos of that for anyone that wants. But when you're pulling that up in extreme cold, it becomes very difficult, right? Because nothing wants to slide like it normally does. So some builders, what they'll do is they'll actually twist the frame to bring the keter rails closer together so they can get that fabric to slide easier. Our system is like I said before, our buildings are designed to stand, so you brace everything and tie it together before you do anything else.
Right.
Our keter rail is designed so that it moves to accommodate that installation. And then our keter rails are actually direct bolted to the structural steel, not a tap type screw system, but a direct bolt through system, so that it's not going anywhere. It's not going to come off. We're actually licensed to build as a contractor in Florida, which not very many builders are, because of the hurricane force winds and all.
Oh, I
conditions
see.
there.
Yeah.
So that's one of the.
And so when you're talking about the owner driving around on a little Bobcat on the machine, or sorry, on the fabric. Does that? So when you're you mentioned you have buildings out in Chile that are on the side of a mountain,
side of mountains,
20 feet of snow.
Yeah.
Does the span between the trusses, does it change because of that, or is the fabric designed to handle 20 feet or a foot? Like, does that not make a difference?
So we designed the building then where there's high snow loads. We actually designed the building to shed. the
Oh,
snow.
that's how you
Yeah,
resolve
yeah.
it. Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
how we deal
So
with that.
you don't need to now have a whole bunch more steel to go into it. You just
No, we
other than
design,
a height.
we design maybe a steeper slope, or you may have to put an extra bit of structure into it. I just worked through a bit of a design program for a project in northern BC, 162-pound snow load. Like that's huge, like I think down here we're maybe 40 pounds, maybe
And
30
this is
pounds.
160.
162.
Wow.
So that's 4 times as much, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, you're going to have a little steeper slope. You're going to the other thing that we need to do is make sure that we have something to protect the sidewalls, because if you've got that much snow coming off a building, it's got to go someplace, right? So
Right.
Yeah.
then so we can actually design the foundation so that it's higher, so that you can get a machine alongside
Oh,
it to
right,
move
yeah.
the snow. So yeah, it's a whole process. It's one thing always leads to another. So
Yeah.
Okay.
and but the other thing too that I want to mention is we talked a bit about steel and the expansion, contraction, and heat and cold. And I just simply forget the coefficient, but I think steel moves about 0.25 of an inch in every 100 feet in 40 degrees or something like that. It's
Okay.
a crazy number. So on a building where you've got screws through it, those screws are
Yeah.
moving all the time with the expansion and contraction of the steel. This doesn't do that quite the same.
Okay.
This has got a very low expansion and contraction. So if it's cold, that fabric's going to be tight. If it's warm, the fabric's going to be tight, because we post tension the fabric to make sure that it's going to hold that span and that configuration.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Um, where for you, outlook as a company, it's you started in the U.S., right? Legacy is
that's correct. Yeah,
originally a U.S. company.
1999 or 97.
Yeah. So it's been around a while, but it's not a 100-year-old company.
Oh no. I don't know how many today. I don't know how many 100-year-old companies you find. Actually.
Yeah, there's very few. But so was there a sort of was there a demand why it was started? Was it just where sort of where does the story begin?
So Ben Fox and Ellie Fox started doing fabric building installation and erections back in the 90s, the 1990s. And they'd gone through this cycle of erecting and being a construction erector for many companies. And when you look at the fabric building industry, Legacy is one of many. There's all types and shapes, and there's there's aluminum builders and open web builders. There's all types of buildings out there. So they'd gone through this process of doing all these different building erections, and the lessons learned coming out of all of these building erections got to be where I know Mr. Fox was probably a little frustrated, and he said, "You know what? There's got to be a better way." So he looked at the industry and decided that custom designing the frame using the metal building software would give them a better structure. And that structure not only can be designed and flexible, but is a much better component than any other structure. And then everything else that he put into it, how the keter rail and how the fabric and how everything ties together and is welded and seamed and attached, is from the lessons learned from all the other issues that they bumped into when they were doing other construction.
Is he an engineer, or did he build a team around him to help design it?
He's an innovator and a entrepreneur, and he has a team around him that is incredible.
Right. Yeah. Where does it sort of go from here? I mean, you said about competitors, and this is sort of the business side of the show, which obviously we're running a business and
Yeah.
you're part of a business, and there's always these challenges. Where with all the competition, sort of what's the goal? Is there a lot of growth opportunity for a company like Legacy?
Yes, there are, and I'm not going to give away any corporate secrets.
Yeah, of course.
But we're always looking for the next best solution. And building something big is always one good thing, but being able to do something unique is and finding the industry where your unique edge will benefit. And one of those currently is in the aquaculture marketplace. We're looking at that and have a number of inquiries simply because we are building one now. And once you build one, then
Right.
then the industry hears about you, and then because you become talk. And there's the other side of the industry. We've always had a great industrial side, like the facilities we built for mining bulk storage or mining commodity storage, warehousing, truck repair shops. All of those facilities stand the test of time and have catapulted us into other industries. So we've got the mining and then oil. Then all of a sudden people notice, oh yeah, big spans. Well, equestrian, that works, right?
Yeah.
And
My sisters would love if you give them one of their buildings. They got horses. They're
oh, do
rodeo
they?
people.
Well,
Yeah.
send her my way. We'll figure that out. No problem. But so we've got all of these industries. Aircraft hangars. We've got one in Brampton. That's for a new innovation that's coming up in the aircraft industry. And it's a hangar. Not quite the same size of Boeing, but it's off the
Apparently
grid.
nothing is the same
No.
size as Boeing.
but it's off the grid. We've got a system where we can mount solar panels
Yeah.
on the side of the building or on the side of the roof, right? So
Wow.
we've got a system for that, and I think that's where the next steps are going to be. Is
the
solar on roofs and
Integrating the
Right.
technology into the structures.
That's right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And who can do that better gives you the edge.
That's
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and and the fact that we now have, and we talked about building envelope earlier.
Yeah.
The Canadian building code has changed over the last couple months here specifically, and it's been in the works for a couple of years. But the Canadian National Energy Code now has a certain requirement that we must meet and shall meet in order to be compliant with in building construction. And our building now has an envelope that is compliant to the Canadian National Energy Code and also ASHRAE 90.1, the 2016 version for metal buildings. So we now have an offering that we can say, compliant? Yes, we are.
Yeah.
And we're also able to work with architects to work through projects so that, and I think this is where some companies begin to falter a little bit. This is our box, and this is how we make our box, and this is what our box is going to look
Right.
like, and you take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Well, we're not that, the city of Surrey comes to us and they want to build a new soccer facility. Well, here's what we'd like our box to look like. Okay. And where our value proposition is in bringing the knowledge from our people into the building process. So we might say, oh, by the way, the other soccer facilities that we've been involved in, they did this, and it seems to work. Oh, well, then let's take a look at that, right? So we can bring in that knowledge through our specialists that we have in our team that can add to all of these conversations. So South Surrey, the Coastal Football Club, we built a building. That's our new soccer facility. I was in it a week or so ago. It's gorgeous. It's just beautiful. Wales McClelland and ThinkSpace did a fabulous job of designing and building, and it's just a beautiful facility for Jeff and the group over there.
Yeah.
And we've got another soccer facility that we're just finishing at Langford. I've got inquiries now from everything from tennis to soccer all across
Because,
Canada.
like you said, once you build a couple, then it starts.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I don't think this is I was just meeting with a couple things. I was meeting with a guy that his company. We had lunch, and his company does a lot of like the glass work on. So a lot of the customized. How they'll have a glass structure,
Yeah.
entryway
Yeah.
and things like that. And he said, with all the building codes now, a funny thing is happening where it's sealed so good, it's
Yep.
so efficient
Yeah.
that now there's a whole ventilation system that needs to get put in place
Yep.
because he said there's people that have thought their building was leaking because there's condensation,
Yep.
and then realized no, there is no moisture. You've
Yep.
heated something up, and now you
Yeah.
can't. There's nothing can get out.
No,
So that must be a
that is exactly one of the items of business that we look at, is because this fabric gives you such a weather tight interior that some buildings were designed to leak, right?
yeah.
This building is designed where it's not going to leak. So all of that moisture that comes off of the human body and the human experience, when you're
Yeah.
cooking your pasta and doing whatever
Yeah.
people do in buildings, it's got to go someplace. So
Yeah.
the only place it can go is you ventilate it out, and as you're taking that warm, moist air out, you capture the warmth off of it with an ERV, and you bring back tempered fresh air, right? So those are the things that we definitely need to take in consideration.
I was curious about the process. Again, talking to this gentleman, and I didn't realize, from ours, we don't bid on things. We reach out to people and connect, and then advertisers come in, and we do a special and do all that sort of thing. It's all basically connection based. With you working with military and municipalities and mines, a lot of this must be tender based, right? Or is a lot of it still kind of older school?
No,
sales?
and you're exactly right. Like, for example, the municipalities have to tender, right? Like
Right.
New Westminster here has a new sportsplex coming up. It's in the market being bid today, literally. So
Okay.
so that's a full blown tender process. Everyone has to bid to the spec, or with your building to their spec. Mining groups tend to use EPCMs, or engineering procurement management construction, or construction management companies, and there again it's a bit of a competitive process where you bid to the project. Where you've got a little more flexibility is private owners. Private owners tend to be a little bit more flexible, where they can go out and negotiate a project. However, everyone's still doing their due diligence. They want to see three prices, and which is good, because competition makes us keener, right?
Yeah.
And as a group, and in my past, I've worked as a, in pre-construction to help clients do that through construction management or through project management,
Yeah.
where we can actually help you and help you through the weeds and all this stuff, because construction's not an easy process. It's a complicated process, as your family probably knows, and you
Yeah.
know very well.
Yeah.
And if you don't do your due diligence, you can pay for something that you just don't get, and it happens way too fast and way too often.
Yeah.
So
And very hard to correct.
and very hard to correct. If you've
Very expensive to
yeah,
correct.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's it's one of those like so many of our shows, everybody in Canada, the U.S., and pretty much every country in the
Yeah.
world has driven by 1,000 of these buildings.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to and now I'm sure people watching the show are going to be they're going to be staring at the buildings
Yeah.
trying to see it
Yeah.
because it's so much information and I think where our show hit a chord is that it's so the innovation and the complexity
Yep.
behind heavy industry
Yep.
and construction that is so amazing. The tech sector gets a lot of focus right now, which it should in the sense
Yeah.
that it is amazing what it's accomplishing. but I think a lot of people are missing how amazing the heavy industrial sectors really still are.
Well, and you know, and you're exactly right. Like and you're driving down the highway and you see this big building in Wembley, Alberta, and you're going, oh, nice. And it actually is, the amount of time and energy and the work that went into that because it's, a frac sand storage facility.
Yeah.
It's got conveyors that are carried by the steel frame system. There can be corrosive environments, so people don't know what's behind the walls, right? And when you drive by, and Fox Creek is a great example because I've had people that have driven by it, been in it, and they said, "That's fabric." What?
I actually didn't realize the outside with the sort of the mural
The
design
syrup,
on it.
yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize that was fabric either.
Yeah,
So-
the beauty is the fact that innovation is the key in all this is to take a structure is a structure, right?
Right.
And every building starts from in an architect's drafting board, and it's bubbles. That's their design. That's their design development program, right? So they're going to have this much space. So everything starts at those bubbles, and then you start to put buildings around that. So whether you have a completely glass front entry or a mass timber front entry, what's behind that mass timber front entry could be anything,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And when I've worked in this industry with the custom designed building for a hotel, who would think about a hotel? Well, I did, and someone else did, and someone else is going to think of it again. But yeah, we're working through potentially hotel development where you'd actually build the structure, and then you build all the rooms inside in an environment, a controlled environment. The agricultural industry, we can build a big warehouse and put buildings inside the warehouse for freezers or coolers or whatever
Yeah.
else it might be. The building is the building. It's what you want to do with inside and
Yeah.
how you want it to look on the outside. That's where the magic is and where we can come into it. So.
Well, thank you, Randy, for walking us through a lot of this information. I have a feeling we'll be talking again on this show at some point because I know you've got some pretty innovative stuff
Yes,
that's coming
yeah.
out that's going to be rolled out later on. So yeah, thank
Well,
you.
no, thank you very much. It was a great
Thank you.
pleasure, and the experience is this is a very welcoming experience. You guys do very well here. Congratulations!
Thank
And
you.
I walk by here on my way to work every day, and I'm going, oh, I wonder what they got going on today. Oh, they rent that room. Okay.
I said we're a strange little. We're actually in a very unindustrial area.
Yeah.
And we're a strange little industrial
Yeah.
type company, but we
So-
have a lot of fun doing it. So thank you.
No, great. Okay, thank you.
We'll do a little sign off.
Yes.
We're going over to that camera.
Yes.
We'll do a quick sign off to thank everybody for watching. Just where they can find us and follow us and subscribe and everything like
Yes,
that.
Absolutely. So remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Crownsman Partners. We've got an episode a week. So definitely, and you can catch up on all the previous episodes. Now 31 episodes.
31.
That's
And
crazy.
a whole bunch more booked. We're very
Yes,
we
we're
got some
definitely
amazing
super
guests
busy.
coming on.
Yeah. So definitely subscribe. You can also follow us on on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all at Crownsman P. Start up a conversation if there's something, you want to be a guest, a sponsor, or you simply just kind of want to chit chat about what we've done. If we've gotten something wrong,
Yeah,
let us
yeah.
know.
Feedback is always good. That's
Yeah.
what it's all about, actually. So.
Definitely. And our Facebook group, the Crownsman Podcast. Please join the group. We'd love to have you guys on there. We don't just post about the Crownsman Podcast. We post about all industry.
Yeah.
Kind of startup conversations there too. So
Yeah, it's a lot of fun,
Absolutely.
that group. And if you have any products that you want to roll out
yeah,
through our specials, we're filming a couple next week, so we'll have some links to show you sort of examples of what those are. Those are going to be powerful tools for really letting customers know exactly what your products are and promoting them. So we
Yeah.
hope you'll join us for some of those specials as well.
awesome.
Okay, thanks for watching episode 31, everybody. We will see you on the next show.